Chasing placements as a music producer. This is definitely something a lot of beginners aspire to do, but is it actually worth it? Well, today I'm gonna be reacting to a popular and talented producer here on YouTube, prodllb, where he talks about some of the strategies and some of his experiences getting better as a music producer, and some tips that you guys who are developing your skill sets can definitely implement as well. I also interview some popular and talented music producers in the game on my Made in the Studio podcast. New episodes coming soon, so make sure you check that out in the description. Stay tuned to the very end of this video because you're gonna walk away with a ton of value. Promise you guys. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Have you ever wondered why chasing placement sometimes feels like you're kind of chasing a carrot on the end of a stick? Like every producer swears it's the key. Just get one big placement and your whole life changes. You can quit your day job. But here's the part almost nobody says out loud. Getting a placement is basically like winning the lottery, except the ticket isn't $2. It's years of grinding, sending out beats, waiting for replies, hoping that your beat gets picked, cleared, and then released, and then hoping that it actually blows up. Now, don't get me wrong, placements are awesome and they can pay really well and open up some real opportunities for you. But if placements are your whole master plan, then you're just locking yourself into the most stressful, most out of control, most anxiety-driven career path possible. So today I'm breaking down why the placement or bust mentality is actually a trap, what the actual numbers look like, and what you should be building instead if you want a sustainable, stress-free career in music production.
Yeah, just jumping in here really quickly, you definitely want to diversify your goals as a music producer outside of solely chasing placements. There's a lot of opportunities and options out there these days as far as building your own community, sending out loop packs, creating live streams. You know, I do just about everything these days here on my YouTube platform. But on top of that, when it comes to placements, my most success has been in the TV and film sync world. Please always know there's not just one way to grow and be successful as a producer. There's a lot of different lanes, especially these days. But let's go ahead and get back into the video.
Imagine you're like a fisherman, but instead of fishing in a pond where you know there are fish, you're throwing your line into the Atlantic Ocean, hoping that a really specific fish swims by, bites onto your hook, and just happens to be really valuable. A little bit weird, but that's kind of what chasing placements is like. There's so many variables you just can't control. Does the artist even hear your beat? Does it fit the project that they're working on? And does the artist want to push it and really promote it? You only really have control over one of those things, and that is just making a really good beat. Everything else, completely out of your hands. Now here's the financial reality that nobody wants to talk about. Let's say you do get a decent placement. Now what did you make from that? Probably between $500 to $3,000, $5,000 if you're lucky. If they really shafted you, you might have signed and got zero money up front, but maybe got like 3% on the back end, which you should be getting anyway, even if you are getting in advance. Now, with that money alone, can you cover your bills? And when's the next big placement come in? Half a year, maybe 2 years down the line? You just don't know. And that uncertainty, that's what keeps you up at night. Placements are basically the definition of high risk, high reward. There's nothing wrong with high risk, high reward ventures. The problem comes when that's all you're doing.
And to go ahead and add on to that point, so much of landing placements come down to really who you know. You know, if you're a really skilled and talented music producer and composer, if you just have the best music and you don't really have the right connections, it could be very, very difficult to land placements because you're just skilled, but you don't really have the right relationships to get the music into the right hands. So that could be another very frustrating part of the process. And unfortunately, I have seen some producers get to the point where they just totally give up, don't even want to, you know, make beats anymore, make music anymore. They feel like the whole game is rigged and it's a total scam and everybody is on the take. You definitely don't want to get to that point. That's kind of a I quit mentality. And I don't want you guys to get there. Just understand how important relationships are and that the right connections can really take you much further than even a producer or musician who's even more talented than you. You know, sounds crazy, but that's just really the nature of the game.
So let me show you what this looks like in practice. Now you're making beats every day, sending them out, waiting for responses. Months might go by. Maybe you get some interest, maybe you don't get any interest at all. And then boom, maybe you just all of a sudden get this huge placement. The dopamine hits, you're validated, it's exciting, you get a big payday. You're thinking to yourself, fucking yes, this is exactly why I do this. I'm on now. But then you keep going, fast forward a couple months, and then you're kind of back to where you started, right? You know, back to your baseline wage. You know, that placement money's gone now, and you haven't had anything else come through in the last few months or so. And you're basically back to square one. That's not a career. That's just a stressful roller coaster. Now, the producers who actually get consistent placements, we're usually not that stressed about it. You know why? Because we have other things going on. We've built a foundation. Placements are kind of just like the cherry on top, not the entire meal.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, some of the frustrations that some producers start to get over time, just because you're skilled at music and you're really, really good at it, doesn't mean that you're entitled to be supported. That could really, really hurt people's ego because they're going to see people who maybe just aren't as skilled as them. You just feel like what you create is just disproportionately better than what other people are creating, but they're getting all the opportunities, they're getting all the placements. And, that could definitely be frustrating because, this is music. We're dealing with a lot of feelings and energy and things like that. Another thing that I would like to recommend to a lot of producers out there is learning how to record and working with recording artists in person. That's not only another avenue of, making money, it's another avenue of production. For me, I started out really in the beat maker kind of role and then eventually moved over into the song producer kind of world. And with that, I just recognized that my ability to create melodies and beats translated over to my ability to create melodies when it comes to working with recording artists. So if someone isn't saying a line with enough energy, then I can correct them. Someone isn't doing an ad lib correctly, I can, give them a few pointers. Even working with effects and EQs, you're doing all that stuff when it comes to beat making. And a lot of you guys don't know that those same skills can translate over into the actual recording process. And I think a lot of you guys are intimidated learning recording and gain staging and signal flow, but there's so many resources out there these days. You have YouTube, Chat GPT, different online communities to help you in the process. So don't be scared. I'm telling you, it's very, very, very worth it. Let's go ahead and get back into the video.
So let me give you a quick framework. Think of your income like having 3 cups. You've got this big cup over here. That's 70% of your focus. This is your reliable, controllable income. Things like teaching, mentoring, products, selling sample packs, drum kits, services, mixing, mastering, content creation. This is your foundation. This pays your rent. This lets you sleep at night. Most importantly, this is stable. Then you have the medium-sized cup, 20% of your focus. So this is semi-reliable opportunities. This is things like building relationships with artists, networking with A&Rs and managers, creating a catalog of beats for licensing, collabing with other producers. This is stuff that can lead to big opportunities and income further down the road, but it's never fully guaranteed. You kind of just planting seeds here. And then right here, the smallest cup, this is 10% of your focus, high risk, high reward activities. So this is things like trying to get those big placements, trying to go for that viral moment. This is your lottery ticket. It's exciting. It could pay off huge, but it's the smallest part of your strategy. You see how that's different from what most producers do? Most producers spend 90% of their time trying to fill this really small cup, the least reliable part, and then wonder why they're still broke, still stressed, still anxious about everything.
Yes, that's a very good point. One thing I do see here on YouTube when it comes to the production world is I see a lot of over optimizing and over prioritizing for one thing. So some producers will just super prioritize on online beat sales, or some producers will super prioritize on getting better at the beat making process. Here on my channel and also on my podcast, I try to touch on a wide spectrum of things so that way things aren't just narrow and super, super focused on one thing.
Let's say you decide to start up some kind of teaching business where you just help producers one-to-one get better at production. You can charge a minimum of $1,500 to work with a producer one-to-one for about 3 months, about 90 days. And let's say you take on 3 new students on rotation every month. That's $4,500 reliable income. And now when a placement comes through, that's a bonus. Let's say you make a very modest $1,500 advance. Now you've made a minimum of $6,000 on top of your mentoring and tutoring business that you've built, and that money's extra. That's just sitting in your account. It's awesome. But now you weren't dependent on getting this placement. Can you see how different that feels compared to not having any of this over here initially?
Yes. So what I'm hearing in this section is leverage. When you have leverage in any situation, whether it be some type of relationship, whether it be some type of business, whether it be some type of employment, there's an extra layer of relaxation of I can walk away from this situation and be okay because I have so many other avenues to help myself grow as a person and a person delivering value to the people. And if you're just solely relying on placements and chasing that, sometimes you can run into issues with, what's ethical and what's not ethical because you're chasing this small pie with a lot of competition. And also that can lead to contention amongst you and other producers because you're all fighting for these, little scraps of money that's left over. Let's get back into the video.
Credibility. When you can say I've produced for X artist, it makes people take you seriously. It helps you charge more for your services. Leverage. One placement can lead to more producers might reach out and ask for your services to help them get better at production and get as good as you. Validation. Now let's be honest, it does feel good and that emotional boost does matter. A financial runway. When you do land a big song, that money can be used to invest back into the business. You can buy better equipment, you can invest it into marketing, or you can just use that extra bonus money, because you've already got a foundation, to just go on holiday and bury your head in the sand for a week and not even be stressed about it. But notice that all of these benefits are amplified tenfold when you already have something going on. Honestly, I've been through both, and having a placement with no foundation is kind of just a moment, but getting a placement with a good foundation can be a catalyst.
There's definitely something that goes along with that credibility. When you're a producer who has different placements, I've noticed, even being around different recording artists, when they're speaking about potentially working with other producers, there's like extra layer of I have to come correct, I have to come right, I have to speak to this producer in a certain way. Some artists will still try it, even with producers who have bigger placements. They will try the whole finesse game, but a lot of the times, a majority of recording artists don't. They see those names, they perceive you as busier, somebody who has a lot going on, and it's true amongst all industries, and it doesn't change in the music industry as well. So let's get back into the video.
Stop asking, how do I get a placement? And start asking, how do I build a sustainable music career? Stop asking yourself, how do I get this artist attention? And start asking, okay, how do I create so much value that opportunities come to me? Stop asking yourself, when am I going to make it? And start asking, okay, what can I build today that's going to pay me next month? And here's the beautiful part. When you have stability, when you're making money from things that you can control, you can actually be more creative with your music. You're not desperate. You're not making music thinking, okay, this one has to be it. I need to get this bag ASAP. You're making music because you love it. And ironically, that's usually when the bigger placements happen, the big opportunities come, because it flowed naturally and you weren't creating under pressure.
That's definitely another great point. When you shift your mindset from an I, me mentality into a how can I help people? How can I cultivate the game, the music game? How can I help other people grow? When you shift your mind from that scarcity to that abundance focus, then that definitely it shows. You become more selfless. You just give people free stuff just because you're in a good mood. You never know. You could give somebody a free loot pack, and then before you know it, that loot pack becomes something. You just in a generous mood. You had a generous energy, and that's just the way the game goes, man. Just things tend to flow to people who they feel like they have more than enough in a good way, more than enough, so they want to help other people grow with them as well. Let's get back into the video.
Everyone wants that moment where they hear their track on the radio or their beat on the radio. And you should want that. That's probably the main reason why a lot of us get into music in the first place. But just don't build your entire life around something you can't control. Build the foundation first, then chase placements. Because when they come, and they will if you keep improving, they'll enhance an already stable career instead of, a temporary fix for an unstable one. So your homework, go away right now, grab a pen and paper and just write down 3 things that you can build income off of that doesn't rely on anyone else. Write a quick list, 3 things, pick your favorite one, pick the one that stands out the most or sounds like the most fun for you to do, and just go and start building it.
And guys, another thing that I want to point out to you is meeting producers in person and actually speaking to someone face to face who's doing something that you've thought about doing. So what do I mean by that? So if you've thought about making loops, going to a conference or a music event and actually speaking to a loop maker and hearing their story. If you want to learn how to engineer, going to a music engineering conference, speaking to an engineer and then listening to their story. How did they start? How did they start getting clients? How did they sustain their clientele base? There's something about that real human connection, human storytelling process that's just super, super valuable. And it's going to take you a long way, because when it comes to the internet and even getting information from things like ChatGPT, things tend to be really fragmented. And when you can speak to an actual human, you can get all that information, put it in a gumbo pot, and then create your own strategy. So guys, please, if you're out there, please make sure that you're, listening to interviews. Check out my Made in the Studio podcast. If you guys aren't able to get out to the different music conferences, but, set a goal, set a budget, just put a little bit of money away each week or each month so you can hop on a plane, hop in your car, actually go to these conferences and meet people and shake their hands and get some real information, some real game that's going to change your life. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit like and subscribe. My name is Desmond A, and I'll be back with more great videos. Peace. Wait, before you go, make sure you go to DesmondASounds.com, where you can get free FL Studio Patcher plugins, free loops, free guides, everything you need to level up your music production. Once again, go to DesmondASounds.com or click the link in the description. Go there now and totally transform your music production.